once again. This is Nuance. Thank you to everyone for joining us. As always, I'm Mike Scala, joined by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop MC in the chair of BLM Tokyo. What's going on, Jay?
Oh man, it's not a bad day, I guess. I'm sure we're gonna get into that. Other than that, things are all right. How about yourself, Mike? Have you dropped out of anything recently?
Yes, I drop out of things every week, and so this week, what am I dropping out of this week? The swim team. I've officially dropped out of the local swim team. Sad to do it, but I was never in the pool in the first place. Still had to drop out.
Yeah, well, it's too bad, but it's sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do it. Speaking of doing it, we might get ourselves in trouble, but we had to do it. This week, we've got a very special guest with us, the returning champion of the show, I would say, Andrey Bystrov, a political consultant from Bryant Bystrov, looking like the sun is blocking 2/3 of Rockaway. What's going on, Andrey?
Hey, how are you?
Doing well.
Happy Raymond Day to everybody.
There you go.
Happy Raymond Day. Mike can't say it because Mike is, candidate type of guy, but I'll say it.
Oh,
Happy Raymond Day.
Happy Raymond Day.
I'm an attorney. That's really why I try to be a little more cautious now. We speak of these things. I respect the legal system, but sure, it is a happy day for many people, and we'll talk about that.
I mean, to be fair, it's a happy day on both sides because fucking Trump is out there fundraising $5 million a day, and there's a lot of attorneys that are getting a lot of fees paid for fighting 34 felony counts. So,
yeah, somebody's
good.
Rich. Somebody's gonna cake off on that for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, speaking of caking off, I wanted to start off by talking about a poll that I put out, but not a serious topic, really, just something for my own edification, to use an Andrey word. I wanted to know in Howard Beach whether people preferred limitless home fitness to work out, because I'm thinking of joining a local gym. I used to be with New York Sports Club because they had a location that was right by my office at the time, and I liked that I was able to get a passport membership and go from location to location. They ended up going out of business during COVID. Someone else took over apparently and kept charging me, and that was a whole thing I had to fight. And so the whole gym experience left a bad taste in my mouth, but I want to get back into it. And so I'm thinking of joining one of these local gyms. Everyone on my poll pretty much said Limitless, which is a local gym right by the CVS here on Cross Bay. One person, I think, jokingly said Planet Fitness. But the interesting thing is, and this speaks to the world that we live in, after putting up this post, all I see on my Facebook feed now are ads for Planet Fitness.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of feel like you brought it on yourself, to be honest with you.
I created a monster.
Yeah. So, I mean, are you going to use it? That's the thing. People get gym memberships all the time, but then they don't use it. And actually, gyms rely on that.
Sure, absolutely. That's how they make their money, right? By people never using it. And that's what somebody brought up. They said that if you're going to use the gym often, Limitless is better, but it is more money. So that's a consideration you have to make. If you're just trying to be a casual gym person who goes once in a while, maybe you just pay the $10 a month that Planet Fitness is offering, and no harm, no foul. But they say that Limitless gives you a better quality according to these comments and everything.
I got caught in that once as well. Like I had a gym membership, and I would go after work, and I would go swim for like an hour and a half, like after work, and I did that every night. And it was like a couple of months straight, and then I got sick. I had a cold, and I didn't go for a couple of days. And next thing I know, it was like a year later when I'm finally canceling my membership, and I hadn't been there.
Yeah, so I like in these type of instances, man, I always say that if you want, I don't join anything, man. I'm the old school curmudgeon and stuff that like I wouldn't join any place that would actually have me as a member. And so
that's a good rule of thumb.
yeah, but yeah, it's the old joke, right? But at the same time, I would always just recommend joining the Y. My one experience with Planet Fitness was, I think, like 15 years ago now. I was collecting signatures for somebody as an organizer on like in the Bowery and stuff, man. And I got approached by this one guy. He's like, "Hey, man, listen, I can't help you collecting signatures for Democrats. I'm a Republican, but I own these 3 Planet Fitnesses in Brooklyn. And listen, how much are you making here? How much are you making here? I can just make you rich. You can just sell these gym memberships." And like he was trying to sell me on like running like the whole thing. Because the thing is this, like, you know, it is sort of a scam unless you're really, really using it. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to get stuck for like a 24-month program just to make it cost effective. And then, like, how often are you really going to go?
I mean, that's the whole insurance model, right? You're paying just in case you need it, but that's how they make their money, by people just paying into it.
Yeah, and I'm against insurance companies too, bro.
Yeah, it depends on if you do use it. And I do, to be fair, COVID changed my workout habits, and I wasn't going to the gym. I mean, a lot of people stopped going to the gym during the pandemic.
They were shut down. Yeah.
They went out of business, a lot of them. And so now I'm trying to get back into that. But when I'm into it, I do go often because I like to keep it up and not miss a day, right? So I'll do, you know, the chest and the triceps and the back and the biceps and the abs and the legs. You do like 4 or 5 times a week. So
you can also jog, and like I keep weights on my like piano and stuff.
You could.
Yeah. They're non-decorative, you know what I mean? I lift them sometimes.
But I like doing all the different exercises that they have, utilizing all the different equipment for the different types of angles that you get. I mean, I'm sure there are ways to replicate that without the fancy equipment, but I do like having it.
You can do calisthenics.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are things you could do for sure.
Yeah, there's tons of workouts and routines and you know, trainers on YouTube. You could do.
You know, I used to have this thing, man.
Every day.
I used to put a bunch of books into like these really heavy bags and stuff and just do like a bunch of different exercises with that. And then I realized how stupid of an idea that was, because the compression of the books, it like created a mold among them and stuff. And I got a bunch of really dope hardcovers that got completely ruined in that process. And that is why I bought weights.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that it had a negative effect on your body, but you're concerned more about the books.
No, listen, no, of course I'm more concerned about the books. Books are important, man. You know what I mean? And, but yeah, listen, you know, the body will mend.
That would be a good segue.
Not thrown out.
We didn't really plan to talk about it this week, but the whole banning of the books is a big controversy over that. You see bookstores and even certain libraries now have displays. Come check out these books. They've been banned.
You know what the issue I kind of see, interestingly enough, I got a bit of a weird take on this whole thing. Like, I've always, you know, I feel like in the zeitgeist, and as like our society has progressed, like the conservatives, the right wing has always been on the side of censorship. And, you know, like, you know, when you're thinking about book burning and stuff, you're thinking about, you know, you're imagining right-wing authoritarianism. You're not imagining a bunch of like left-wing folks and stuff. My concern is the reason that it's being allowed to such a degree, I think, is because the left has their own positive associations to censorship now too. You know what I mean? Like, you heard about the Roald Dahl books or whatever, that they were going to take out the words fat and stupid. I mean, like, you know, look, here's the thing, man. I think that you need to keep books in the same exact and have the same exact language that they used to have, regardless of the contemporary mores and stuff in terms of their associations today. But what you need to do is provide children that are reading these books the context of those times and understand where we were societally there and why things were written in the same exact way. I mean, it's hard to pick up like a, you know, I'm not saying kids should read this, but like a Henry Miller book, right? Like, I love Henry Miller, but he had a lot of rough shit to say about like everything. And, you know, I get it and stuff, but at the same time, he was born in like the late 19th century, man, like 1888. You know what I mean? What are you going to do?
And I think we need to get away from this philosophy that we see now, that just being exposed to something means that you're going to take on that message and believe in it yourself, or that somehow, like, if we show something to a kid or anyone, we're endorsing the message. I mean,
oh yeah, what about, yeah, did you guys ever talk about the thing that happened in Tallahassee, the Michelangelo statue? You was an Italian, you might have some things to say.
Who? For what?
Did you not hear about this? That the principal got fired in Tallahassee and stuff for showing photos.
The Michelangelo.
Yeah, of showing photos to kids in a middle school, photos of Michelangelo's David, and parents said there was pornographic, and so the principal got fired. And now, by the way, the I guess the town where the statue is housed and stuff in Italy and stuff, the guy was like, hey, he's welcoming the principal over and stuff for a visit. Yeah,
and that's a little bit different.
Come over and see my stone.
But I was talking specifically about the case where people seem to think now that in art in general, if there is something negative in there, that's an endorsement of the message. I mean, it could just be a cautionary tale. It could be,
but first off,
we want you to see this so that you know not to do this, not to say this.
Correct. Yeah, sometimes it's not even a message. Sometimes it's literally nuance, and I think that's what I'm concerned about. I think that we are censoring ourselves into just dullness and stupidity, and both from the left and the right. The right is doing it in a more pervasive and a more malicious way, I would think. I think that, from the left, they're trying to do it in as a thing of benevolence and thing, but at the same time, we shouldn't be censoring language, period. It should just not be a thing. Rather, we should be teaching kids how to better deal with language, how to understand language better, and how to utilize their language skills better.
Yeah, we'll never learn from the past if we don't study it, if we just bury it, right? Yeah. Then you're dooming the new generation to repeat those same mistakes.
Sure, but I also this has been a consistent fear of mine. I think that we're slowly stupefying our kids. I think it's just absolutely a tragedy and stuff, the lack of reading and the actual fundamentals that go on in our school systems today and stuff, and the idea that you're going to have some of the dumbest generation of kids coming out of Florida public schools ever, and now they're going to be carrying guns without a license. It's insane, just so we're clear.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Just so you're clear, just so we're clear, I graduated from Florida high school.
Hey, man, listen, go back to your school and check the curriculum, bro. I guarantee you that shit has changed drastically.
I graduated in Tallahassee, and it was last 6 months of high school.
So there you go.
Yeah.
But what about this? Before we move on from this topic, what about this argument that you hear that there really are no banned books because you can still get them? It's not like it was in old times where they would actually try to ban people from having them all together. But what they're saying is, in certain cases, maybe they're saying they're not appropriate for children, they're removing them from the curriculum, but they're not really banned.
Well, they're banned.
So if you're removing them from schools, you're removing them from public libraries, places of public schools. What's the last bookstore you've seen walking down and stuff down the block? A lot of people walking on the streets in Tallahassee versus driving and stuff. Look, the parents aren't gonna go out and purchase these books for their kids. The whole point of them being available in a public place, particularly a place of education, is so that kids can learn. You're taking away tools of learning from children. It's stupid. It is.
I agree.
100% dumb. You know what I mean? I don't really know what else to tell you and stuff, because you're talking about in Florida now, they've shown some of these textbooks and stuff for young kids, right? Where you can't even say that Harriet Tubman was black. Right. What are you talking about? This is the most. Right. I mean,
then listen. At the same time, when they're pulling these books and trying to change words like fat and whatnot, nobody changed the N word coming out of Mark Twain books.
They have, yes, they have.
It's every dark crevice of my butt cheeks with some of these nonsense.
But they censored.
No, but they have though. So they have with Mark Twain.
Not everywhere.
No. So modern books being printed and stuff, they've specifically changed Huckleberry Finn and all that stuff, right? Particularly because they feel the kids shouldn't be taught about why Mark Twain utilized that language at that particular time, right? And nor about really Mark Twain's life, and the fact that while he was a brilliant writer, he was also kind of a scumbag sometimes.
Right. But to be clear, though, people still could get those books. I know children aren't probably buying their own books on their own, but if their parents really wanted them to have them, they could still order them from Amazon or whatever. They could still get them.
Yeah.
Again, what parent who thinks that Michelangelo's David is pornographic, right? What
they think
point
that,
is
they're not gonna
what
let
point
you.
is he gonna, or is that parent gonna order like Mark Twain or like Toni Morrison
That parent?
or
No.
fucking anything like to their house? Like, what are you
No,
talking about?
but they would
That's
say
not
that
gonna be
the
a thing.
parent, but they would say that the parent has a choice then, right? They could
Right.
either allow their kids to see that or not. That's up to them. So if they don't think that's appropriate, they can.
Listen, you know what the biggest disaster is, and by the way, like I know it's probably going to be like a bit of a hot button thing to say and stuff, and like, but honestly, it is very disheartening to me and stuff. I watch this thing on Vice. Sometimes they have these panels and stuff where you'll have like folks from the left and the right debating an issue, right? And in this instance, they had educators, they had teachers' aides, and folks like that from more of a conservative background and more from a liberal background, right? And a progressive background, right? And it's interesting, they couldn't agree on anything, right? Couldn't agree on anything with one exception. And I'll say this. There was a lot more kind of unity when they asked about what kind of role should, who should be creating the curriculum, or should it be, and everybody to the one. So the conservatives lean more to like parents should be in charge of the curriculum, but folks on the left, they were talking about how it should be kind of a thing where it's a mix of parental oversight with a standard curriculum. Not a single person said, I want the parents as far as away from all of this as possible, because it seems like contemporary parents are just trying to make their kids as dumb as they are. Nobody's ambitions today seems to be, I want my kids more educated, more suited for the world, and smarter than I am. It really seems like I'm scared of my kids' potential intellectual superiority, so they need to be as stupid and as ignorant as I personally am. And that is,
That's what they're thinking, or that's more of a subconscious thing.
I honestly look. So I would assume that they're not, personally enlightened enough to kind of admit to themselves how dumb they really are, and so probably it is a subconscious thing where they're like, I want my kids at my base level of like intellectual stimulation. But like, I'm sorry, like, listen, parents should not be part of the overall lesson plan. They really shouldn't be. There should be certain influence from parents on, parent teacher unions and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, but at the same time, like, we need to have certain decisions about what is education for our children, so they're not left behind on a global scale. You know what I mean? Like, before we were talking about how, like, you're in Japan right now, right, Jay? These kids go to school 6 days a week. They have August and part of July off, right? That's it. What are we talking about, man? Like, how are our kids in any way competing with these children?
Young kids.
Well, but just to be fair, though, there's a lot in their education system is a lot more of a memorization thing. Globally, as far as global information and knowledge, they don't get a lot of that. And so a lot of the students come out of school in Japan with a lack of that information. So they do. So that, just to be.
You're saying they lack a global worldview, right? But at the same time, they're fairly cognizant of their own world history, I assume, right?
No.
I mean, of their own of Japanese history. No,
not really.
That's very surprising to me and very unfortunate as well.
I was going to say, right. So Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, won that race primarily on this issue of parents having more say into the school curriculum. Voters said that was the number one issue when they went to vote that year, and that's when it flipped from a Democratic to a Republican state as far as the governor's chamber is concerned. So that was alarming, but it was a very big issue, and that was bipartisan. Like the point you made before, you saw Democrats and Republicans saying that. Now, you have this theory, I guess, that it's about intellectualism. Could it be less
Listen,
about
look.
Hold on, but could it also be about a fear of the world that we have now on both sides? And
no, look, I will concede to the fact that, look, there are some teachers are also that could be considered at fault. Maybe they have some, kind of virtue signaling thing going on. They're recent graduates or something. A 22-year-old is teaching third graders about, some of the worst elements of slavery that, I don't know. I've heard some stories that I've never really seen any foundation behind. But at the same time, like, no, you probably shouldn't necessarily discuss really, really kind of difficult subjects with really young children. You should find different pathways of educating them about the realities of America and the American experience for everyone. But at the same time, like, I understand that there are potentials of taking it what could be too far. So, like, look, I don't want to, also disengage with the experience of folks that are maybe more conservative. I'd rather kind of talk it out and see where their parameters are, because look, they might be completely irrational, but they could also, see their rationality as some of the censorship that's coming from a Glenn Youngkin, Ron DeSantis. You know what I mean? Like, maybe there is a pathway fucking towards something towards the middle of the idea and stuff.
Do you think there's some kind of a middle ground with someone like a DeSantis?
No, not a DeSantis. But what I'm saying to you is this, right? Like, if you show a textbook, right, to somebody, and they might be a conservative or Republican, right? If they have any brains, right, and you show them something, and you're like, if you can't talk about the Black experience, if you're teaching civil rights, how does that make sense? And if they say, hey, yeah, that wouldn't make sense, that's at least maybe some sort of like a most basic kind of comprehension point, you know what I mean? Agreement point, right? Some shit like that.
James in the chat says it should be up to the school. I'm so glad I don't have kids. I hear you, brother.
I mean, I think some of this is where there's a bunch of factors probably here, right? Some of it is the parents uncomfortable with certain ways that they feel personally, or things that they are confused by. I think that's one part of it. I mean, we saw that with Common Core, right? I mean, this is one of the things that got really big when they changed the way the Common Core math was being done and the way the calculations were being done. And parents are looking at that like, well, why can't we just do it like we did it before? What is this about? And to be fair, I was looking at some of that math too, and it's like, yeah, this I got the same impression. Like, why does it got to do this? And so it's kind of,
2 + 2 = 4. Now you have to know 4's innermost thoughts and feelings as well.
To some degree, right? And
what are you talking about? Please don't propagate some sort of like mythology of somebody talking about the feelings of numbers. I don't believe that is happening.
Well, clearly that was a joke.
This is not happening. No, there are people that will believe that this is the case.
And that's a reflection of their own intelligence.
My point,
but that is kind of where we're at in some ways, where you're getting some people who will latch on to something like that and think. Talking crazy and conservatives, be like, this is really what.
Yeah,
does that go back to censorship?
School boards across the nation were worried about an epidemic of furries being allowed in schools. What are you talking about? Of course, they're going to latch on to feelings with numbers and.
Listen, this is a country, and we talked about this in the last podcast we had before, where people were having the emotional support peacocks and stuff on planes. Like, people are really, this is where we're at right now, and so even. A tongue-in-cheek kind of joke like that, somebody somewhere is going to latch on to that. And
is that why there's this inclination for parents to want to control everything that happens in the schools? Because they think, hey, all these messages are out there and people are going to really take them seriously now. And it's like this, like a heightened sensitivity to everything. We can't let people just develop and know what to take seriously, know what to joke, like have any kind of context or nuance in here.
Right. Nuance, man. We need more nuance in public schools, in public discourse, in public media, in public policy. Just more nuance. I am asking for more nuance in every sphere of, social arenas, man. Like, in every element of it. We are dumbing ourselves down to like a preposterous degree. Well, and while simultaneously developing smarter and smarter AI. Good luck, guys.
Yeah, so you asked for more nuance. One place there is more nuance is on Reddit, because we've been posting up polls on Reddit. Nuance.
That's what Reddit's known for. It's nuance.
Well, we're bringing Nuance to Reddit, I guess, in a poll subreddit. And
That's the new motto of the podcast.
more nuance wherever we can bring it. That's the goal here, right?
Reddit, where balanced discussion goes to live. Yeah, that's
Well, yeah, but okay. But you know what? The discussions here are actually pretty balanced, at least because both sides are presented and there's civility, right? People will give an idea.
but before moving
Yeah.
on to the poll, like this is still about as far as this education point, like
Yeah.
what did I think one of the things we're seeing here, and this is it's going to be a little bit more serious here, but a lot of this pushback is a byproduct of white supremacy becoming very uncomfortable with people pointing out things that we really should have changed a long time ago. You know, certain things that we've been learning, the way curriculum is done is very Eurocentric, even though there's world history, right? But we learn more about certain things, and some of it's because of, you know, we are a descendant of, or at least the country comes from England and this and that, but there's still more to it. There's more people that have contributed, and then people who are in this majority group that have enjoyed this privilege of the light being on them, now having to somewhat share the spotlight in education and knowledge, is feeling like they're being taken away from, they're being demonized.
Right.
And so this is kind of what this pushback is. Why are we learning about different types of people? Why are we learning about CRT, even though that's not really what they're teaching in the high schools? It's, so they're feeling a certain way about that, but it's really correcting some things that we should have corrected before, and them feeling like they're being attacked because of it.
So I would pose a slight disagreement to your position. I don't think it's the white supremacy fighting back. I don't think anything really has changed previously in terms of like what we were teaching our kids. And then all of a sudden, because white supremacy became mainstream in 2016 with the Trump election, then all of a sudden school boards and like all the lower positions within public policy positions have gotten kind of inculcated by this ultra right-wing messaging. You know what I mean? It's taken over school boards, it's taken over library boards, it's taken over so many things. That's the pushback. They're saying CRT is in our schools. It's never been in our schools, man. What are you talking about? Like nothing's actually changed. So they're pushing back against a standard that we had in the 90s, you know what I'm saying? Like it didn't really change and shit. We actually should be teaching more when we're actually not. They're fighting against the little bare crumbs of fact and information that we're trying to give to our kids.
Right. It's because the culture wars really took front and center, and we don't debate policy even anymore, right? We debate whether Mr. Potato Head should have testicles or whatever.
No, but yeah, correct, right? But we're also like getting into really weird areas where now we're debating whether Nazis are okay. Like they're not. Yeah. No.
Right. Exactly.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, we fought wars over this. Like we shouldn't be having this. Like, is this okay?
Like, yeah, the Confederacy lost. Nazis are bad and stuff. Like, what are we doing? Like, no.
And we're also going back to the 70s with Roe v. Wade. So,
like, yeah,
backwards as a society.
Correct. So,
and to be fair, these fights, they just never had a foothold, because the people have been wanting to overturn certain things. There are people who believe in the Confederacy. I mean, there's the whole South. There's a lot of politicians down there who've had these talking points for decades. It's just they never had that foothold that they have now, since the Trump era and that whole, and it's been a slow buildup, but there was where it was like people felt like it was okay to start speaking out and actually gaining traction from it again. But they were still there.
All right. Well, we talked about moving back. Here's a way where New York at least says it's trying to move forward. There's a proposal as part of the state budget to ban gas and fossil fuel appliances in most new buildings. We put this poll out to the people asking if they agreed with the proposal, and it was actually pretty close, but 55% of respondents said yes, 45% said no.
We should ban the from our poll. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 55% said they agreed with the proposal to ban gas and fossil fuel appliances.
Interesting.
A comment here says, all it will do is lead to more fossil fuel burning for power generation. Someone said, all it'll take is a 7-day blackout in winter and people will die. That's a very provocative comment.
Well, I mean, I think there's probably a little nugget of truth there. Like, if we go completely off grid, off of gas,
Yes.
and then the electrical grid goes out, then what happens at that point? I mean, without some kind of system in place to deal with that, what happens when there's an electrical grid blackout? Because I remember when there was the
we would be Texas.
I think several years ago, there was either a major blackout or something that was down this East Coast, and I forget, but I just remember that my family had dealt with it here, and the electrical grid was out everywhere, and they were out of electricity for a couple of days. And it took like a day or two before they realized and remembered that their stove was on gas. And so even without electricity, they could cook again. And so then they started to be able to cook, and they had the fireplace runs off of gas, so they could have warmth, but the electricity was out all throughout. So
here's a comment that kind of speaks to what you're talking about. They say, how does the US simultaneously have some of the largest reserves and extraction of natural resources in the developed world, but also genuinely have to plan cities around the fear of a week-long blackout? They go on to say, I've lived in Spain, France, the UK, and even in Japan, not once in my lifetime had to even consider a blackout lasting that long, being frequent occurrences moving out of Cuba 12 years ago. A magnitude 7.4 earthquake destroyed basically anything fragile I owned last year in late winter, and my power was only out for like 3 hours. How does the US go through several week-long blackouts a year?
do we have several week-long blackouts a year? Is that really that?
I mean, we're also much bigger than the countries that were previously named and stuff. We have
Right.
more landmass, more citizenry.
And we do have some old infrastructure that we haven't really modernized in the way that we should.
It does
And
happen.
we also
And
use a
don't forget
preposterous
Puerto
amount of
Rico, right?
electronics.
Puerto Rico was out for like a week recently after the last hurricane.
That's true, and it's happened several times.
We also use a preposterous amount of electronics here.
That's we consume probably most electricity on the planet, proportion wise.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely need to be up to scratch in our systems. I mean, look at New York. You're running on 100-plus-year-old infrastructure on many things. So, we should be modernizing these things to be more efficient, to be.
And we also need to be very, very well, like far more caught up in terms of like being, preventing any sort of like hacking of our electronic infrastructure.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, on the flip side, the people need to also be aware of our over usage. Like, we take a lot of these things for granted, whereas some places like that person mentioned, they might be more aware of the electrical usage that's going on because they have a smaller infrastructure.
Well, they also named a couple of places where it's not commonplace to have air conditioning. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like,
yeah. So we run air conditioning or heat 365 days a year. And we try to control every aspect of life in that regard. We don't think, okay, well, it's just a little hot, I'm going to deal with it. No, it has to be the exact perfect temperature.
Listen, man, if it's not 72, man, I'm just a shit show.
Yeah.
72.3, baby.
So,
What is it?
What?
72.3. We're getting more precise.
That's still too cold, man.
Yeah,
other than that.
All right, I do want to get to the indictment. So before we do, let's just get the other topic out the way because it was important this week that came up. It was the concealed carry.
Hey, that's not the only other important topic.
Okay. Oh, you want to talk
No
about
one cares.
NATO doubled its.
No one knows about that.
You get into that.
Finland is now part of NATO. Congratulations, world. Fuck to Vladimir Putin.
You don't have to curse every sentence, Andrey. Chill out.
Just about Putin.
All right.
The rapper telling the guy to chill on the cursing. It's hilarious.
Hey, man, my new record, I use that language selectively. Has more impact that way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I do want to talk about Florida's concealed carry bill, which looks like the governor is going to sign it past the legislature, and I think he's going to sign it. It would allow people in Florida to carry concealed weapons anywhere without a permit. You would still have to follow whatever laws are in place for the firearm itself, which, Florida, so it isn't that restrictive. But aside from that, there will be no longer be an additional step to get a permit for concealed carry. Anyone who's allowed to have the weapon will be allowed to carry it concealed without any kind of license or regulation whatsoever. I actually put up on my stories over the past week footage from me speaking at the Democrats Abroad Japan forum on gun violence, because we saw a school shooting recently. It was relevant, so I wanted to get that footage up and generate some discussion on it. I also recently was pleased to learn that a bill that I was advocating for a long time passed in New York, and it was signed by the governor. It is now law in New York, where people in New York are going to have the right to go online and see where firearms recovered from crimes originated from, which state and even which county they came from. So it should really shed some more light on this. I got some debate, some heat thrown at me from my stories where I was talking about all this and talking about how more states should do like New York when it comes to its gun laws. And I talked about how we need more uniformity. In fact, one of the first quotes from myself that I put up out there was about this idea that the NRA and the GOP and a lot of people are putting out this talking point that gun laws only affect law abiding, right? And they say that all it's going to do is make it harder for law abiding people to get guns because criminals don't follow the law anyway. Say that. And so I was talking about, well, this law that now is passed and is in effect in New York will allow people to go online and see that the gun laws do matter, because we're seeing the guns come from these states with weak laws. Obviously, the laws are making a difference. One of my other quotes that I put up in my stories was about how New York's laws only go so far when people can go into Pennsylvania, for example, and get a gun and bring it back to New York. And that's why we need Pennsylvania to step it up and do more. So the response here that I got was, so you're saying that gun laws only affect the law abiding and the criminals will do what they want anyway? And I said, no, clearly not. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying that the laws obviously are making a difference because you're seeing them come from places, the guns are coming from places with weak laws. Clearly that means the laws are mattering, right? But their perspective on it was, well, who cares, right? New York has its laws, but if you can go to another state, then New York's laws don't matter. That was my point also. But my point is that the laws do matter. It just is a matter of those other states then having to step it up and have better laws, right? It doesn't mean that the laws don't matter. We should have no laws now because there's inconsistency there. That doesn't make any sense.
So just to be clear, by February 23rd of this year, Florida had 7 mass shootings in the state. So just in the first less than 2 months, right?
Right.
By February 25th, nationwide, there were 6,502 deaths from gun violence in this country. I don't know, making it easier for people to carry weapons openly. Does that seem like a good idea to anybody with any kind of rational sense?
No, not at all. So I did respond to this comment that I got. Usually I don't really engage much with some of these comments, but wanted to clarify some things. And it was an interesting discussion that we had. This person was saying that it sounds like I'm trying to commandeer the rights of the states and violate their 10th Amendment rights. I said, I'm not making the states change their laws. Like, I don't have the power to do that. I'm advocating for people to organize in those states and pressure the elected officials in those states to change their laws. So the state itself will be doing it. I'm not violating their 10th Amendment by saying people should organize in the states. They're making it sound like I've got the power to just sit here and change Pennsylvania's law.
I mean, if you did, I mean, I'm sure there's some other laws you could probably change in Pennsylvania as well.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not a 10th Amendment violation if the state is doing that. And I talked about how in Virginia, for example, we had a guest on here talking about how they had to get certain people elected to the legislature in Virginia to change it blue so that they can get the ERA passed, ratified by Virginia. And that was a movement they politically organized around that issue. And so that's what I'm advocating for. This was a Democrats Abroad forum. Voters from different states were present. I said, listen, New York is doing what we can, but it's not all about New York. This is very much a federal thing, and we need states to step it up because it is so easy. You drive back and forth between New York and Pennsylvania, New York and Virginia, New York and South Carolina, whatever it is. No one's probably going to stop you, right? So you can be able to traffic these guns. That's what's happening. And so up to these states to step it up. But that's up to them. I can't force that to happen. I'm advocating that people in those states make it happen.
And it's necessary, right? Because otherwise, because we have, since it's the United States, we operate for one country, and there's that free movement between states, and each state has their own different laws. And so aside from making everyone have to stop at the border of every state and check your passport and get checked to make sure that you're complying with the laws coming in, of the state you're going into, we need to have more uniform laws in regards to some of these bigger issues, especially like, carrying guns.
Right. And the interstate commerce clause comes into play, not to get too constitutional here, but the interstate commerce clause allows Congress to regulate matters of interstate commerce. And this is very much an interstate issue. And so there is area of regulation. That's why you have the federal assault ban, which was sunsetted in 2004 and still hasn't been passed. But that was challenged constitutionally, and it survived muster because Congress can regulate that area. At the same time, states have the right to regulate licensing schemes, right? Make sure people have the proper permits. We're seeing Florida choosing not to do that and say, we don't need you to have a permit anymore, but states can do that, right? States just like to do for cars, car insurance and everything else. That's part of this as well. This is all legal area of regulation, which does not run afoul of the Second Amendment. This commenter got into that with me also. He said, it sounds like you're advocating for a soft repeal of the Second Amendment. I said, no, and I made this point. I put this up in the stories also. I said very specifically, if you're pro-Second Amendment, you should be for common sense regulation because the words well-regulated are right in the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment doesn't mean no regulation is a free-for-all. It's not limitless, just like the First Amendment is not limitless, right? There are always boundaries here. If you're going to take the view that the Second Amendment means there could be no restriction, no regulation whatsoever, you're taking a more expansive and extreme view than even this conservative Supreme Court has taken.
In that view, if we take that all the way out, that means, okay, you're cool with everybody on your block having a nuclear weapon. Like,
yeah, no, I know. It doesn't make any sense. The comment that they made to me was that when the framers of the Second Amendment got together, their intention was for citizens to have any kind of weapon that they wanted.
They, at that point, could not imagine the weaponry that we would have crafted.
And that's what I said also. I made that point. I said,
this is the dumbest point ever.
But
yeah, Thomas Jefferson would have a heart attack if he saw a plane.
They sent me a screenshot of article or some kind of post or something about automatic weapons existing in the 1700s. I'm like, you're really going to compare the weaponry of that day to what we have out there now, the military grade weaponry?
Listen, I guarantee you the framers, if they ever saw an AR, would be like, yeah, we didn't mean that shit at all. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Well regulated. There are always limits here,
But I mean, to nitpicking on that point, not really nitpick, I guess. I think pulling well-regulated, could that be that well-regulated was meant to go with militia, period, not with individuals?
A well-regulated militia. So you're saying that individuals shouldn't have a right at all to a gun?
No, I'm just saying, whether it should apply to individuals, whether they should not have it, or that they should be regulated or not. But could it be that well-regulated only applied to the formation of militia?
Right, but
in that case, individuals would not have
the Bill of Rights,
right?
Or they could have all the rights.
But no, hold on. But the Bill of Rights was relating to individual rights, so it's immediately the right to bear arms, and then the regulated militia is a secondary element.
And if we're going by the current Supreme Court law, which obviously we see can change, but this was a conservative Supreme Court that said this. They said that a city and a state could not ban everyone from having a handgun. So that individuals did have a right to bear arms at some level, right? But there is room for regulation there, obviously. They're not saying it's unlimited.
Right. And it does, in the way that it's written currently, it should be more of a state issue. Having said that, look, man, you do need more regulations federally on on guns. You need more background checks. You need an actual digitized system of licenses, which does not exist federally, does not exist on state levels. It is incredibly dumb. You need to be able to track bullets. A lot of this stuff is fairly common sense, and it is just being fought by greedy special interests and really kind of just, folks that don't really give a shit about how much blood they have to swim in to kind of fulfill their avarice. And it's just it's absolutely horrible. You know what I mean?
And look, the right to bear arms. Okay, but that doesn't say what type of arm that you could have.
Right.
You could have the right to bear crossbows, and guns are not a part of that. Like, it's still arms. It doesn't say which type that you're allowed to
The
have.
Supreme Court has said, at least as a baseline, that you can't ban handguns. So
I'd like to point out, by the way, that we have changed prior constitutional amendments when a certain common sense rationale needed to be involved in changing public policy. This is another one of those examples.
you're saying change the interpretation of the amendment.
No, change the amendment.
Actually have a new amendment to the Constitution.
Correct. Or amend this or amend the Second Amendment. You can have certain rewrites of this thing. Yeah, because like the truth of the matter is, man, if you're comfortable with the fact that the number one cause for child death in this country is gun violence, that's that's insane. That is absolutely batshit crazy.
You don't need to. I'm under the framework of the Second Amendment, there is plenty of room, right? Even with the conservative Supreme Court we have that struck down some of New York's laws, and New York is pushing back against that. There's still room for regulation here. I mean, we could do what New York is doing.
The thing is this:
voluntarily going the other way. No one's forcing them to.
Look, but I mean, it's very much an intransigence that's in the U.S. Congress that's occurring. You know what I mean? And it's also an intransigence that, because of this kind of very heated bubble that we're creating with the culture war that we have, right? Because realistically, look, if Joe Biden wants and stuff, right, he can create a state of emergency in relation to gun violence in this country and open up new avenues and pathways through executive action and stuff, and force down some regulation. The unfortunate thing is he won't do it because ahead of an election and stuff, people are going to spin it on the right as, it's Uncle Joe coming for your guns. You know what I mean? And so he's saying, look, let the legislature take care of it, but the legislature doesn't move. And so this is how it's going to continue on.
I do give credit to the president for not abusing the executive authority as the prior administration has.
Yeah, but look, kids are dying and stuff. But I understand why, right? I understand why, aside from the political, from just curtailing, just kind of curtailing, a potential craving for power that's uninterrupted, right? Like from the executive. I get that too, right? So that's good. But at the same time, something does need to change, man. And it really doesn't seem like our Congress people are up to the job.
Absolutely.
It was just disheartening to me when I was so happy that this law was passed. I was like, okay, so now we're all going to be able to see, but we really already knew, but it's going to really shine light on this and show, okay, look, these guns that are used in crimes in New York, look where they're coming from. And I thought that was going to help us move the conversation into a more factual place so that we can have this discussion on policy. But for someone to then come back and say, oh, so all you're saying is that the laws don't matter? So even if they're presented with the facts, they're still going to deny them.
I mean, we've seen how divided things are, and how irrational things are today. Facts don't seem to sway people when they are stuck with a certain ideology. And that's a big problem, especially today.
Yeah. I think a lot of that we see playing out now with the indictment. So we'll get into that.
And the problem is we have people who will think like that are in office.
Sure.
I mean, we talked about DeSantis, Marjorie Taylor Greene and her craziness. She was on, what was it, 60 Minutes or something, 2020 or whatever it was this week, a couple of days ago, talking about the Democratic Party is full of pedophiles. Like, just spewing off nonsense. But this is a congressperson, so it's what may be rational to us or to someone with a mind that's thinking in nuance is not rational to someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, but who puts them in office?
Honestly,
People who think that way.
You should honestly be required to take like a basic civic test and stuff before you run for public office.
I don't think that would matter with her, because even if she could
I don't
cite,
think she would pass it. I don't
cite-
think she would pass it. I don't know if she can write. I don't know if she can spell the word fucking legislative.
but that's still just reciting facts about the system. That doesn't change the mentality.
I don't think
The way
she.
she thinks.
I don't think she understands just basic principles. Period.
But
I think that she's less racist, and she is racist. Don't get me wrong, but she's less racist than she is stupid. And that's the
I
thing.
don't disagree. I don't disagree, but I don't think that would bar people from her. That would just make more people who are smarter about the system that think like her ideologically get into office.
Yeah,
I'm actually more okay with that. I'm actually more okay with that.
What you're saying, Mike? I think
You're basically saying we would get less Trump, but more DeSantis.
exactly. There we go.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with having somebody who is completely diametrically opposed with me, from me and stuff, in terms of my political beliefs, but is intellectually competent enough to have a conversation with. When somebody's so stupid and mired in this, like, in just bigotry and hatred against anything and everything, you can't change their mind, because they're too stupid to even really have a mind. This is just dictum that's been repeating in an echo chamber inside their cranium. You know what I mean? Like, it's not changing in any possible way. It's not a person whose mind you can shift in any possible way.
That's true.
Some of those other people who are intellectual savages, right? Intellectuals, but also really fucked up in terms of the way they view the world. At least with them, they're sociopathic enough where you can figure out their motivation and their own benefit in a pathway that you want to lead them. You know what I'm saying? If you can figure out a way for that guy to make money from renewable energy, might be down. John Boehner is one of the biggest proponents of medical marijuana and legalized weed right now. That dude is the most conservative and like also like halfway between like a dimwit and not a dimwit. But at the same time, what I'm saying to you is you can find these pathways of appealing to people who at least have some sort of intellectual stimulus. Some of the folks that we're putting in office now have none of that. None. Just nothing going on up here. Nothing.
Right. But can it then, I mean, and I'm not saying that, people shouldn't have to pass this test, but what my point was, and Mike touched on it as well, like you end up getting people who are like the comparison between DeSantis and Trump, where Trump was an idiot that was in the office. DeSantis got some of the same views, but he's much more intelligent politically and aware of the system and how to use the system that Trump is. So he could be more effective and more dangerous in many ways.
So again, Ron DeSantis is going to have the Ted Cruz problem. The Ted Cruz problem is this, that if you meet Ted Cruz for 30 seconds or more, you're a repulsive human being. The thing is this, like the commercials might work for a bit, but some people do got to meet the candidate, bro. And like when you meet Ron DeSantis, you're like,
doesn't matter.
They vote for the policy.
He's been elected multiple times.
But he's not magnetic in the way that Trump is, in terms of like, faking out this populist message and stuff.
Bro,
that's the one thing. Look, that's the one thing
over Florida right now.
He was able to be magnetic enough to con people in believing that he was a populist. Ron DeSantis doesn't have any of that magnetism, man. He's not a Pied Piper that anybody would follow off the cliff. And by the way, that's what the modern Republican Party requires of you. You got to go off the cliff, bro. Trust me, it's better down here. And like, I don't think that he's the guy that people would follow. I really don't. I've seen.
But you're talking very specifically about one person. I think we're talking more of a philosophical thing where.
No, philosophically, again, yes. The great fear is that eventually you're going to have
politicians versus.
Eventually, the Antichrist is going to be the GOP nominee, and he's going to be, you know, smart enough to like take the world over and stuff.
I don't think Trump got off with the way that his bravado and everything. DeSantis doesn't have that same sort of thing, but what he does have is that will appeal to people that would follow Trump and follow the far right. He has a track record. He could say, look, you don't like to hear about these trans people and this LGBT? I did this don't say gay law. I got it passed. You don't want to talk about CRT? Yeah, I got it kicked out of our schools. I got our books banned. You want something to happen? I can make it happen. I've done it. And so that will have people latch onto it.
Right.
I disagree in this. I actually think that as soon as the Trump MAGA
shit, I got Disney shaking in their boots. Like,
no. What are you talking about, dude? He only got taxes raised for people in Florida, and then Disney told him to go fuck himself. It sucks. The entire system is fucked because now he's just raising taxes for Floridians and stuff while not actually being able to do shit. Did you not hear what actually happened with the whole thing?
But it doesn't matter. Like Disney ideology. Ideology.
The Disney board, right before they left, they made it a point that the new board that DeSantis was putting on can't actually regulate or do shit anymore. And they use the clause, by the way, Mike, you should read into this. It's the like the King Charles clause or whatever clause that like up until the line of King Charles II is dead, this clause this contract would be in
right, because they're trying to avoid the perpetuity language. They're trying to get around that.
Unbelievable, but it's brilliant. Regardless of all that,
we're getting way off track here. I want to put the poll out about the concealed carry law, believe it or not, and then we'll talk about
Prince Albert clause
all night.
Yeah.
Anyway, the poll question of the week is: do you agree with Florida's effort to allow people to carry concealed loaded weapons anywhere without a permit?
Please say no. Please, please, please.
They're gonna say yes. Listen. I think a lot of the responses.
Some people are going to say yes. And we'll get some comments. Second Amendment is unlimited. Most people, I believe, are going to say no. They don't agree.
But I think a lot of the responses that I see that we get, I think that are put out there on the internet, YouTube and whatnot, I think these are the right wingers. I think.
By the way, how big is
55%? Come on, guys. 55% said they agreed with banning gas.
I'm talking about response, people who actually write comments.
Yeah, I think you get that. You get that. More of the angry comments, the angry Yelp review comes more from the right.
How big is like your hate watch audience, by the way?
There are a few.
Because like I'm by the way, I'm wearing a Star Wars Bernie Sanders shirt right now, man. Come at me, folks.
No, you know what? I think it's okay though. I'm okay with a hate watch. I'm okay with a hate watch audience, right? And I'm okay with getting some of those comments because when I respond to them, I try to throw it back to them to make them explain their position. And so make them engage. And so, I mean, we are nuanced. We want to kind of look at that as long as it's not super, super ridiculous. Like today, there was a comment and it was regarding the gas stove. It was the poll that I put up and someone was like, it's like, no, absolutely not. Take your fascist Green New Deal and crazy climate change thing and shove it. And so like I was like, well, so climate change is not a factor, was my response. And then he comes back with some weird thing and I'm like, well, how do you, I was like, but he said something. Well, I'm gonna have to pull it up because I'm clearly gonna butcher it, but hold on a second.
Hey, by the way, I'm actually thinking about changing my gas oven to an electrical oven because I think the Biden administration will actually pay for it. There's like a whole thing that like they reimburse you and stuff. Because my oven is like 20 years old, man. Like all the knobs, they don't have the actual numbers on them anymore. So like I have to guess everything. I really prefer the gas, but at the same time, like if the Fed is going to pay for my new oven and stuff, I'm all with that.
How often do you cook with a stove? Because I don't really cook on a stove.
So I used to cook a lot, man. I got this like malt liquor barbecue chicken wing recipe and stuff. So I can use like some really cheap malt liquor. You mix in some barbecue sauce. You do some fresh veggies. You soft simmer that stuff, and then you keep basting the chicken in the oven.
You got like 8-ball wings? You're making like 8-ball wings over there?
Huh?
You're making 8-ball wings?
What kind of wings?
8-ball. Old English 800 malt liquor.
I thought you were saying something completely different,
Me
man.
too. I thought you were talking about like snowfall wings.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, man. Some of that type of shit that they used to do in the 80s and whatever. Yeah.
So Jay, what's
Rick James wings. That's what I thought you were talking about. But
okay.
Yeah.
That kind of 8-ball.
No. So actually, weirdly enough, I found out that King Cobra, which is one of the worst malt liquors in the face of the earth and stuff, actually makes a mean barbecue sauce.
Okay. Jay, did you find that comment?
Yeah. So on the poll, the guy's response is like, biggest scam invented. CO2 emissions are the lowest in 100 years. It's all about control. And so my response was a little bit more measured instead of like, I was like, well, it's simply not true. They're way higher than they were 100 years ago. Where are you getting your information? So I engaged him to give me his background. And
Prager, you.
Instead of coming back crazy, he did come back and had a pretty, sane response, even though it was, crazy. But I mean, he engaged in that way. He's like the guy who founded the Weather Channel did a documentary on climate change. He showed graphs of the gases in the atmosphere over 100 years. Our levels are lower than 25 years ago. It makes sense why politicians purchase oceanfront homes the past year, and a photo of Plymouth Rock with no increase in ocean height. So at least he tried to come to the table in a conversation in a somewhat sane manner instead of just starting to spout off, talking crazy, buzzwords. So I did engage back with him. I'm waiting to hear back. So I said, that's also clearly false, but
See, I leave that to you, and I'm glad that you do it. I usually don't go back and forth with people on the posts. I prefer to talk about it here. That's why we do the show. But it is good to get that engagement on the posts.
Yeah, and I want to, because like I said, like we've said it before. Some of the times it's just how people are talked to and how they talk about things. And so, and even Andrey said it earlier with people, they could be crazy, but if they have a little bit more of an intelligent capacity to them, you can have some sort of a discourse and maybe kind of find out where they're at and either lead them one way or try to take them somewhere else with it. And so if we can do that in the comments, then we get some engagement there and people see that this is kind of what we're looking for here in the show.
Right. And also we're putting out questions that are based on proposals that are out there, current events. And so it's not like we're saying this is what we want out the blue. We're asking people how they feel about something that was put forward and try to get the public opinion on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and like you said, on topics of the day, and I think that brings us to what's got Andrey smiling over there.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. The indictment. Now, obviously, the first time in U.S. history that a former president was indicted. So, a big story. It's going to be in textbooks and all the history books, unless they're banned, I guess, right, for years to come. But we unfortunately didn't get a whole lot today in terms of what the indictment said and the actual specificity that we wanted. It's really what we had kind of known already, right? And sometimes prosecutors will have more in the actual papers. Sometimes they'll wait for it to proceed and then they'll start introducing their evidence and building their case. It seems like we're more in that category here where we still don't know a lot of clarity on what, for example, the crimes are that would elevate it to a felony. We do know it's election reporting violations, campaign finance. We know it's of that flavor, which we already knew.
Well, I before we got on here, I have to find it, but I thought there were 35 counts. They were all federal charges.
34.
34 and they carried a maximum sentence of 125 years or something.
Well, because it's up to 4 years per count, right? So you do the multiplication.
So realistically, I think that if this wasn't, if Trump wasn't running for office, if he wasn't running in 2024, the way that this would happen is that they would probably settle with like 6 months probation on like 2 counts, throw away the rest, and make him pay a fine on some shit like this.
So if that's the case, and you're saying,
but what I'm saying is he can't plead to a felony and still run for president.
so you're saying,
that would make that part of they would make that part of the deal.
I'm saying he would have to plead to one of the felony counts. I'm saying if he wasn't running for public office, I'm assuming like this would probably be the way that this got sorted. You know what I mean? Like it's you know what I mean? Like all the counts are really the same and shit, right? It's
all right, well, let me all right. So to set this up,
it's a small felony.
Yeah, for people who may not know, so the underlying crime that's being accused, right, falsifying a business record, that by itself is a misdemeanor. What would elevate it to a felony, because there are many felony charges here, is if you're
34, all 34 are felony charges.
All 34 are felony charges. So what would elevate it from a misdemeanor to a felony would be not just concealing the record, but concealing it. I'm sorry, not just falsifying the record, but doing so to conceal another crime. And so what they're saying is it's an election, campaign finance violation, because he was using the hush money to help his political chances, because it was right before the presidential election, and that should have been reported as an expenditure on his campaign finance records, right?
Right, and this related to 3 separate payments, including the most famous one, which is a Stormy Daniels payment of $130,000, which actually was originally $150,000, but he paid back $130,000 to Michael Cohen.
Right.
Then there was a $30,000 payment to the doorman of Trump Tower and stuff, who claimed that Trump fathered an illegitimate love child. That was another catch and kill story from the Inquirer. And then there was another woman, I believe, who was claiming sexual assaults, or just an affair. No. But in this particular instance, that actually received a payout.
Right.
Of course, there have been multiple women, for the record, who have claimed an alleged sexual assault by the former president.
So from a legal perspective, here's where it gets a little more difficult, and there really isn't any settled law on it. It's a little unprecedented. You've got the state offense of falsifying a business record, right? It's a state crime, and that's why it's being pursued by the DA at the state level. But the felony, the crime that's being used to elevate it to a felony, seems to be a federal offense, right? That's the FEC reporting. That's the federal campaign finance reporting. And so there is a question as to whether you can elevate this from a misdemeanor to a felony by using a federal law that was being broken. Remember, you need a law, you need a crime that's being covered up by virtue of this falsifying the business documents, right? So there's a question out there. Does that crime have to be another state crime, because it's a state law we're talking about, or can it be a federal crime, as it seems to be in this case? That's the theory that they're presenting, right? The prosecution is saying he's violating state law to cover up a federal crime. But the question is, does that elevate it to a felony or not?
So they're also, like I said, I don't know if you guys caught the remarks that Alvin Bragg made immediately following the arraignment. I've been kind of just watching this stuff, off and on all day. But he did allude to falsifying some tax documents as well. So that's going to be an interesting thing to kind of see later on.
But federal or state, I guess that would be state crime as well.
Again, I don't know. And again, there was just an allusion to it.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And
the fact that we don't have the documents in hand.
You're right. And we didn't get a whole lot from the indictment. We got kind of like the bare minimum. So we'll have to learn more as time goes on.
And I think it should be a continued conversation and stuff as we get more information. For the time being, my questions kind of revolve around, when do you guys think we would actually see any movement on this case? When would an actual jury be picked? When do we actually see a trial? Is the trial, do you think it's going to be televised?
I think there's a new state law.
Any other cases are going to move faster than this, the Georgia and the DC case?
I do think there's a high likelihood of it being televised. I also think that if it goes to trial, probably let's say in about a year would be a good estimate. So I think it would certainly be before the 2024 election.
I think it should happen today. I think just
Listen, I don't practice criminal law. I practice civil law, and it does move longer. You do have a right to a speedy trial in a criminal context, so in theory, it should go quicker. But these cases can take forever. I mean,
And this is also like white collar crime
Waiting
stuff. They're
forever.
gonna all like file a ton of motions on each other and stuff.
sure.
It's gonna
Sure.
just be forever. So my thing is, like, when do we actually see like voir dire and shit? Like, when do you actually see us moving to like a jury selection? And by the way, how the hell are they going to pick a jury? So this jury has to be the dumbest jury possible, right? Because it's going to be like, have you ever heard of Donald Trump?
No.
Like, what? Like,
Well,
what
there
are
is an
you talking
argument
about?
that, and Trump's lawyers are already raising the argument that it's going to be impossible to have a fair trial in Manhattan.
Yeah, but they're
Yeah,
saying some stupid shit, like moving to Staten Island. Like,
Staten Island.
yeah,
Like people
okay.
in Staten Island don't know who Trump is. Like, come on, that's gonna be.
They like Trump more. That's what they're hoping for.
It's the only thing that we've got right now is what happened today.
Yeah.
What happened today?
Arraignment day.
Indictment day. Yeah, no, and certainly, again, unprecedented,
Yeah.
first in U.S. history. It's definitely a day. April 4th, 2023 is a day for the history books.
Yeah, but no, so it is fascinating. And I'd like to say for the record that, while it is incredibly important and it is a historic day, I would like this not to be the fight. You know what I mean? Like, I much prefer the DC and the Georgia case, and the Georgia case in particular. I do think that that particular venue might have a more hostile jury, for example. But, and that's going to be but at the same time, it's a much more pivotal case. As I said with this one, if he was not running for office and could actually take an F on his record, you know what I mean? Like, then I don't know, man, this thing probably would be resolved in a hefty fine and some what's it called?
If that's true, though, then this is what Trump is saying, a political hit job. Then
It's not. It's a crime. He committed 34 felonies. The thing is, they're
but you're
down.
saying that if he wasn't running for office, then this would probably just be a fine and then go away. But since he is running for office,
no. But he would still get a felony on his record, right? The thing is, he can't afford the felony.
Right.
So he's saying that
it's Trump's people that aren't going to settle. You see what I'm saying? They're going to try to take this to court because A, they could fundraise off of it, and two, they can work at their way of making him into a martyr. And I mean, look, the man is in his late 70s and stuff. If he stalls these prosecutions for long enough, like, what's really going to happen?
Well, I wanted to ask about that from the political side. It obviously is making him more relevant again. You saw the media even trying not to cover his campaign, right? And you can see much of Trump. They kind of took that approach last time. We gave him too much oxygen. Let's not even talk about him now.
Sure, they gave
now
him
he's
kind of
front page
media
news all over
time.
Like he's going to suck all the oxygen out of the room again. Does that even lead to Ron DeSantis not running? I mean, is he going to basically be unopposed for the nomination at this point?
No. Listen,
DeSantis has aspirations.
There's plenty of Republican consultants at this point that understand they need to. Hold on a second. That understand they need to get their ducks in a row. That they need to have a vigorous primary and stuff. It at least in a just in case situation.
Right, okay, but
that a conviction
occurs. There's the Mike Pence Pompeo primary, and there's a DeSantis primary. Those are two different things.
No, but look, you know what I mean? Like Asa Hutchinson, right? He just got in the race and stuff. It might be another Republican.
Hold on.
No, what I'm saying, it might be another Republican clown car of a situation. Top dog. Hold on a second. The top dog gets taken out and stuff. Everybody vies for a Trump endorsement, even if he's wearing fucking cufflinks. You know what I mean? Like, and then that's it. The clown car, and then eventually the rabble rousers.
Is he going to have serious competition for the Republican nomination at this point?
I'm saying right now he doesn't, and he won't, because Ron DeSantis will top out at 30% with Trump swallowing everything else regardless. I don't care how much Murdoch and him have a problem and stuff, and how many Republicans I see these days talking about how and by the way, elected officials, not actual constituents, but like I see a bunch of Republican elected officials talking about how the era of Trump is over. Like, no. I don't believe that one bit whatsoever and stuff. Having said that, I do not think he could win a 2024 election without cheating. Look, man,
it wouldn't be the first time a felon ran for president. Right, but who was behind bars? The leader of the Socialist Party. You know what I'm talking about back in the day.
Yeah, but I mean, you
Elected
still
president
can't become
behind bars.
president. You still can't become president as a felon.
In theory, he could, right?
There was an article that, and who said, I forget it was the last couple of days, talking about how theoretically there was a way that Trump could still be president from behind bars.
Oh, sure. If people voted for him, absolutely. Eugene Debs. He ran for president several times, 1900, 04, 08, 12, 1920. You know, he would get between 2.8% and 6%, but he had his followers. And yeah, at one point he was actually behind bars running for president.
But did he was guilty of a felony?
He was convicted of a felony, but if I'm not mistaken, it might have been overturned. I think it was a First Amendment issue.
All I know is that today, I'm not really satisfied because I wanted a perp walk, I wanted shackles, and I wanted tears. I wanted lots of tears. And
look, I wanted a mugshot, man. I like
a mugshot,
but there was no mugshot, just fingerprinting, and yeah.
But see, this is unprecedented, of course, right? A former president going through this, but I think, you know, and it's definitely going to play to his base. He's going to go out and he's going to parade around and be like, yeah, you know, they're trying to get you, man. You're trying to get Trump. You know, they can't get me, blah, 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 blah. He's done this a million times. But again, he, like you said, he broke the law. 34 federal case counts.
Allegedly, right? Like we have to say that.
Allegedly, he broke the law.
Hey, listen, I just want to say that, like, the man has always acted like a criminal. It should not be any surprise to anybody that he's in fact a criminal. And I'm not saying allegedly.
I agree with you. And I think now, could this, like, you see Republicans are coming out the woodwork and they're like, oh, you know, supporting Trump, even Lindsey Graham, this and that. And I saw,
I guarantee you Trump's people got photos, man. I guarantee you somebody got photos of Lindsey doing some shit in Mar-a-Lago. There's some stuff that they got on Lindsey because Lindsey hated Trump. And like every time he's interviewed about Trump by like anybody, like you see it in his eyes and stuff. You're like, man, I hate Trump, but I gotta just let my mouth say all this like ass kissing bullshit.
I think there's two things that we could look at there. Like, one of it is, like, I saw a news report earlier today, and they were saying that the reporter was saying that some of the Republicans, even though they're going to bat for Trump, that behind the scenes in one-on-one talks, they're saying they want to be done with Trump. They want to get rid of Trump, but they're in the public, they're supporting it because it's a party thing. The second part of it is people like Lindsey Graham and DeSantis who are supporting this or against Trump being indicted. I think it also, when he gets indicted, it opens the doors for their misbehavior to be scrutinized and those indictments to come their way as well. Because people are playing into Trump's playbook right now of do whatever, say whatever, and just, you know, it's okay because he's been skating by and he's been the example of it. So if someone actually gets held accountable, then people might have to alter their course a little bit on what they're doing.
Well,
listen, man, from your lips to God's ears, man.
With hope, yeah.
I wanted to ask about the comparisons to the John Edwards case, right? Because there are similarities that have been brought up, but there are also very stark differences where John Edwards was also prosecuted in a money scandal, right? Ultimately wasn't convicted. I think there was a hung jury on one of the counts. But
and one of them they actually threw out.
Right. So this has been coming up a lot lately for its similarities to the Trump case, but the difference there was that happened well before the election season, and so Edwards' argument was that the hush money wasn't to influence the voters in any way; it was to keep his wife from finding out about it. Whereas in this Trump case, maybe they'll argue the same thing. I don't know. But it was right before the presidential election. So clearly it had an impact, and you can make the case very strongly that it was done for the purpose of influencing the electorate.
Well, that's probably what their argument is going to be, that this was, hey, we're going to.
And it wasn't campaign related, right? Because getting back to this cover up allegedly of the campaign finance laws, right? You have to report all expenditures that you make that are in furtherance of your election if they're campaign related. So the question is going to be, was that hush money payment campaign related or not?
All I know is I'm tired of being a being teased. Ever since he's been put in office, it seems like every other week there's ongoing investigations. There's something that comes out that says, "Oh my God, this could be the one that does it," and it hasn't happened yet. I want this dude behind bars. I want him to shut up. I'm done with him and his kind. We need to quit playing around.
Well, I wouldn't get my hopes up for an extended prison sentence.
I'm not, unfortunately.
Hey, listen, man. Anything would do at this point, man. I'd be happy to see him like in Rikers for 30 days.
Years.
No, listen, man. Trump and Rikers for 30 days. That would be very interesting.
Lixa in the chat says a felon can run and be president. There's nothing in the Constitution that prevents this. Only naturalized citizens can't run. Yeah, no, that's true. He would legally be allowed to run, felon or not. I do think that it would be very harmful to his chances in a general election, considering he had such small margins to work with and lost a popular vote by millions of votes each time in the first place.
Yeah, I'm just not so optimistic. He's gonna skate by all this.
You think he's going to become the president again, Jay?
I think it's a very big chance that he can be. I think it's a very big chance, and people who don't think that that's a possibility are deluding themselves. And Democrats and the liberal side like to gloat big time and do little giddy dances when something like this happens or something against Trump pops up, and it's all fun and games, but the real danger is that yes, he can.
This is a cartoon of Eugene Debs actually running for president behind bars. He says, anyhow, there are worse places than a front porch. Yours for the presidency, Eugene Debs. This was a cartoon from the time.
I don't think we should take him lightly. Even amidst all of what's going on with him, even if he's in court, unless there's something that specifically bars him from running and winning, I don't think people should take it lightly.
No, I agree with that, but I also do think we have to be mindful of that context, that his margins, even when he won the Electoral College, were razor thin, right? In those states, we're talking tens of thousands of votes in a couple states only. And
yeah,
but court has eroded since then, and he lost in 2020 not just a popular vote but the Electoral College. And so, if he is a convicted felon, I do think that's a strike against him. Doesn't mean he can't win,
right?
But it does make it more difficult, for someone who already was at the margins in the first place. He never
convicted felon, but
support the country.
If he's a convicted felon, he's also a political martyr.
I think it helps him in a Republican primary for sure.
Yeah,
I think a general electorate is gonna gravitate towards a convicted felon.
Hopefully not, but they put an idiot in there in the first place. So,
well, again, that was 2016, and he still lost the popular vote by millions of votes, and so he won with very small margins in a couple of states. You think he's gonna get those back, having lost them already in 2020?
I don't underestimate his chances.
Well, that's fair.
I also don't underestimate some of the whack jobs that have gotten into offices that are now going to be doing the actual count of these ballots, man.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, look at where we're at. The stuff we've talked about today: book
Right.
banning and college course banning and old rule what carrying guns without permits, concealed weapon. Like, look at all the stuff that's been happening in the past 10 years. Like,
by the way,
and we did say that it was the voters who put these people in office. So
yeah.
no, but I mean, sometimes it's also the people who didn't put him in office, right? Because it's like, think about it this way. So people keep talking about who is going to be Trump's running mate, right? And a lot of people think it might be Kerry Lake. They asked Kerry Lake. Kerry Lake said, I can't run for vice president and be governor of Arizona at the same time. Come on now, guys.
it's going to be
Like,
Nikki
we're
Haley.
living
She's gonna
in
drop
such
out
a
and support Trump.
delusional, huh?
I said it's going to be Nikki Haley. She's going to drop out and support Trump.
Yeah, that would be the smart move, realistically. Not for her, but for him.
Yeah.
I
I think that I kind of feel like that's already on the table. I think that.
Yeah, I think that was the setup
I
originally.
think she's running to actually help him get the nomination by taking DeSantis votes away.
none of this stuff is surprising me anymore. DeSantis is a big problem. He's going to be a big competitor and contender against Trump. And
I thought so.
both
I
crazy.
thought so before. I don't think so, man. Meatball Ron is not going to be the guy.
I hope, because he's a more competent Trump, and in many ways he's more dangerous legislatively than Trump. I mean, the guy is working on banning black fraternities from college campuses in Florida. Like,
Yeah, but listen, man. Look,
Man.
it's time to stop visiting Florida. That's really the entire like point of this whole
That's
thing.
the bottom line.
Time to stop visiting Florida.
do you remember the
Florida's-
old Bugs Bunny cartoon where like he goes and he cuts Florida off of the map and he pushes it into the ocean?
I'm just saying, man. Like,
I do so well.
might be that time. You've heard it here first, folks. Florida sucks now.
I do like playing poker against them in Florida, Hollywood.
Listen, hey, you can't really
You can't
say
lose.
that. You can say that, but let's not pretend like a lot of South Florida is not made up of people from New York.
Right, but South Florida is more northern in character than northern Florida. I think you got to worry more about northern Florida.
And South Florida, they're
Where the swamps are and stuff.
Oh yeah, come on, that whole state has got a lot of crazy going on there.
All right, but there are a lot of
You've
safe
been there.
people.
Wait, Mike, you've been there many times when I was living there. Remember when?
Right, but where do we get? Okay, but that's my point. Where do we get in trouble? Where do we get stopped by the police? In northern Florida, not in southern Florida.
Yeah, but
I got stopped. I got stopped by the police in Miami.
You probably deserved it.
We didn't deserve it.
No, we certainly did not.
They pulled us over, pulled everything out of the car, brought the dogs. Like, come on, like,
Yeah. But there
I
are
was-
also
I was
really
same people
16
in on the
Florida, too.
beach,
And I
man.
think we need more political organizing. I don't think we should be abandoning these close states, right? And just writing them all off. We lose even more when we do that.
yeah. I mean, can Florida be salvaged? I don't know.
Not with Ron DeSantis, man. Look.
There's no reason why. See, here's the thing: Florida has
There's enough
consistently-
people. There's enough
consistently
people.
chosen. Wait, Florida's consistently chosen people like DeSantis to head them for decades. You had DeSantis. Before you that, you had the guy that looked like a penis.
You have Rick Scott,
you had
Lord
Bush.
Alderson.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
you
but
had-
look how close these elections are, though. Razor thin in Florida.
It
That's why
doesn't matter if they're losing.
But they're so close that we should be giving up on them. We
They're
just lost
still
by 10
losing.
votes, so it's right off the whole state. I think that
DeSantis.
to spend
Listen,
more time on that.
and by the way, you know what I mean? Look, if I don't know, man, I think that like if Andrew Gillum didn't screw up as bad as he did, things might be a little bit different.
I don't know. DeSantis,
Well-
Scott Bush, these are Batman villains running the country, the state consistently.
You mean
Like-
Bush?
Yeah,
Charlie
Bush.
Chris wasn't as bad, was he?
Jeb, yeah.
Yeah,
Charlie Chris
Yeah.
wasn't as bad, was he?
Jeb was bad. Listen, they had.
Chris, not Jeb.
I don't know about
Charlie Chris, yeah.
But I mean, when I was living in Florida, it didn't even hit news. But some of the state elected officials handcuffed themselves to Bush's desk in a sit-in because of the stuff that he was doing.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I still feel like even that was quaint in relation to what's
sure.
happening now. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So my point, it's getting crazier
Yeah.
as each
That's
iteration
why I'm
goes
saying
on.
Florida sucks now. Abandon Florida for a little bit. Let a
I
bunch
don't
of people
co-sign
there
that.
lose money, and then like start electing better folks.
Are we okay?
Yeah,
so
but you can't start
boycotting
letting folks if
Florida?
you're going to abandon it.
are we boycotting
saying-
Florida
I'm
How
products?
to organize.
I'm saying let's stop subsidizing this dumbass state.
Wow.
Listen,
That's it.
are we boycotting Florida products? Is that what we're doing? No more orange juice?
No, I mean orange juice is tasty.
I wanted to bring up this.
California orange juice.
This point might be a little esoteric, but I wanted to bring it up because it is my area of expertise. It's election law, and there is a comparison between a case that I actually had argued and the Trump case, and it relates back to this issue of different types of law, right? In the city council races here in New York City, there's a question as to how many signatures you need to make the ballot, right? In the New York City Charter, it says 450. The state election law says 900. Normally, state law trumps city law, so you would think 900 would be the answer, but it's a lot more complicated than that. And the conflict of law is considered like the most complicated class in law school that you could take. Judges don't even want to do it. there's provisions in the state constitution that give the cities authority over certain areas to act, even if there's a conflicting provision of state law. But there was a case I was in where I was arguing 450 should be the number the city charter should hold, and the opposing attorney said 900. Their argument was that even though there's a provision in the state election law that says if there's a conflicting provision, you use the other provision, that's a city provision, and the city provision can't override the state provision. When the state law talks about conflicting provisions prevailing, they're referring only to other state provisions of law. And again, it's a very complicated question. I'm not going to go too deep into it. The judge didn't even want to answer that question. They decided on some other grounds. But we're seeing something similar in the Trump case where, again, the state law says that you have to elevate it to a felony, you have to be concealing another crime. The question is, does it have to be another state crime, or can it be a federal, some other type of crime? Again, judges hate answering this question. This could also be a situation where maybe you get a conviction on that. Maybe the jury convicts for felony counts and then it gets appealed to the appellate division and the appellate division kicks it back down to a misdemeanor. That could happen too. It's one of these laws. It's an area of law that no one really likes to answer, and there really is not a lot of precedent on it because courts go out of their way not to answer the question.
Looks like they're going to be faced with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, I think that we just needed to kind of pull off this Band-Aid of like getting this asshole indicted and arraigned and stuff on this one case. And then like, I'm going to kind of start shifting focus towards, like I said, Georgia and DC. Because realistically, like I said, man, I think that the stuff in Georgia, man, that's treasonous conduct. And like, honestly, if you get him for something, it should be for that.
Get him for everything. I want
get him for everything. Yeah, look.
I want him gotten for shoplifting. I don't care. Get him for it all.
No, yeah, look.
Lecherous gazing. I don't care. Get him for that too.
I've got two more questions on this. I think one of them, Jay, you're really going to want to get into. But the first question, I guess, is more procedural when it comes to law. I guess it's really more in my wheelhouse. But
okay, while you do that, I have to grab my charger because I'm about to go.
Okay,
I don't want to cut off, but you go ahead and do that, and I'll jump back to the second question.
Okay. So first question is, people are raising the statute of limitations argument. And I think that Bragg is trying to get around it by saying that the statute of limitations is told because he was outside of New York for a lot of that time. And we know
what's the statute of limitations on this?
I believe, hold on a second. I had looked this up for falsifying business record. Let me not say the wrong thing here. I know that he's beyond it normally because we're talking about 2016, right? This is when the behavior occurred. Let's see. I did pull it up, but the argument I believe that they're going to make is that it's told because he was outside of New York for years.
All right, I'm back. I've got power.
Charger. Maybe we can ask Chat GPT. I don't want to say the wrong number on here. As far as what is the statute of limitations in New York for the felony charge of falsifying business record to conceal another crime. I believe it's either 4 years or 6 years, but we're beyond that now.
What was it? The statute of limitations of what?
Of falsifying a business record to conceal another crime in New York.
Okay.
Because that could also come up. You know, we always want resolutions to these cases on the merits, but oftentimes courts will just defer to the procedural arguments and not have to reach the merits. And that's always disappointing when you want to the resolution to the substance of the case.
Right. I checked AI.
And AI is sometimes confidently wrong.
This Correct. Is true. I didn't use ChatGPT. I used Perplexity AI, which is a search AI. And it's saying that according to New York Penal Law 175.10, falsifying records in the first degree is a Class E felony with the intent to defraud includes an intent to commit another crime or to aid or conceal commission thereof. However, the results do not provide information on the statute of limitations for this crime. So I don't know how clear, I don't know if any of that made sense to you, if that was correct.
It's just saying that they don't have the answer, basically.
But did it pull the, at least pull the...
It is the correct provision of law, yes.
Okay. Well, one win for AI. Woo-hoo.
I mean, actually, no, it's not a win because it didn't actually answer your underlying question.
At least it knew that it didn't know the answer. Sometimes it just
Yeah,
doesn't know the
listen.
answer.
Yeah, come on.
That's also true. That in of itself is a win when like the computer says, "Hey, man, I just don't know."
Right.
Yeah, and I would prefer that.
Yeah.
Because then you can rely on the answers a little bit more. I tell you, Perplexity actually has been. I've been using that a lot more than Google since.
I saw something online and stuff where some girl hooked up a Furby to ChatGPT, and it turned out crazy as hell because it was like, when are the Furbies going to take over, and it gave this like systematic plan and stuff. It's just it's horrific.
Okay. Actually, from what I'm seeing now, and I know I had it pulled up before, but I lost it. I'm actually seeing it might be 5 years. But either way, I did take note of the fact that we were beyond
The
period.
statute, yeah.
I'm sure the prosecutors have gone through that with a fine tooth comb so that they're not embarrassed, because if they go to court and this gets thrown out on something like that, then it will have
Well, they have an argument to make. They could lose on it, but at least they have a plausible argument.
Can I ask you, Mike, something?
Yeah.
What about if it's an ongoing crime? What if he continued to lie and forward documents?
Well,
because I think Bragg's position is that since he continued to lie about this payment and still does not admit to the payment being made as a hush money payment, that's a continuation of the crimes, that it's ongoing.
Well, there could be some validity to that because the crime is fraud, a type of fraud here, right? And so lying about it could be construed as continuing to perpetrate the crime because you're continuing the cover up of it. Normally, just lying about a crime isn't going to affect the statute of limitations, but when a crime has an element of it that includes lying, you can make the argument that it's told if you can plausibly argue that the crime itself, the commission of the crime, is continuous.
Right, and you're continuing the conspiracy while defrauding the public as you continue to campaign on the same kind of basis. You know what I mean? Like,
right, but it gets kind of complicated because you're looking at FEC filings, and I think you mentioned some tax documents were brought up. But what if the obligation to make these filings and make this reporting is already over? I mean, you can keep lying about it for the rest of time, but does it count as a continuing crime if your period is already up? If the committee is already closed, you're no longer under any obligation to report this information, right?
Right, but he was original. Oh, yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Yes.
So at a certain point, it would be cut off, but that is something that they can look at and try to argue. Yeah.
I mean, well, look, honestly, it's gonna be entertaining enough to kind of watch to see what happens here. And it's also going to be entertaining for me to kind of watch as a lot of details unfold into kind of just how nefarious and systematically morally bankrupt the kind of Trump organization is in their like everyday dealings and stuff. I'm going to be entertained by how much Republican talking heads are going to try to whitewash all of these like negative things that are going to be coming out during this court proceeding and stuff. You know what I mean?
Right. So the second question I did want to ask was about, I'm seeing this on social media from some conservative people. They're saying that Bragg basically and other prosecutors are letting violent criminals go. They're not focusing on crimes. How dare they talk about how justice has to prevail when they're choosing this really as a political measure and they're not taking the overall issue of crime seriously? Why is Trump being targeted and not every other criminal that's out there? There's a perception that Bragg in particular is weak on crime.
So, I mean, Bragg actually answered this point. He said that, specifically this crime, this felony count of falsifying business records is the kind of underpinnings of most of his white collar crime cases. And he's talked about the fact that during his time as a prosecutor, he has consistently done this. Now I don't know his record. It's for somebody else to speak on, but I feel like before you make that statement, you should probably check his record and how many times he's prosecuted folks for white collar crimes with particularly this charge. So I'm not going to say one way or another about any of that simply because I don't know his record, but I have a feeling that if he said it, he can probably back that up. I'm
Right.
sure that if you look onto his record as a prosecutor, that you will find a correlation of these type of cases.
But I think you kind of hit at the heart of it there. People are really drawing a distinction between white collar crime and violent crimes. And I think they're really more concerned about violent crime. And they're saying that he is not pursuing that. He's going after this white collar, high profile political case, maybe because he wants to become governor or, has higher political aspirations himself, but he's not focused on criminal offense, on violent criminal offenses. Let's not forget, Bragg was the DA that when, what's his name, was running for governor, Lee Zeldin, he said, I'm going to fire him on day one. That was like his whole campaign. I'm going to fire Bragg on day one, because Bragg it wasn't even about Trump at the time. It was because Bragg came out with that memo when he first got in, instructing police officers not to arrest, right? Or I think he said he wasn't going to prosecute certain crimes, so they shouldn't bother with them.
Right.
So
listen, whatever, I don't know his track record or any of that. And white collar crime tends to be, very pervasive, and can affect a lot of people. And we're talking about a crime related to running for and achieving the highest office in the land that's going to affect hundreds of millions of people. And when you're going in that position, you should not only know better, but you should do better. And we should expect you to. And so, yeah, these people should be scrutinized, and if we find any failings, they should be prosecuted, especially if it's something that's going to put him in a position to affect the lives of not only the 300 million people in this country, but globally. Like, there's a bigger responsibility here, I think.
Right. I thought you were going to get at that, right? That there's more scrutiny that should be put on people in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's, I've said it many times. I think, people in these positions, and that includes politicians, that includes police officers, you've got the public trust, and you've got this responsibility in your hands, and you know better, so you should be doing better. You should be held to a higher standard. So someone committing, fudging the record to run for president or to become president, should be held to a stiffer penalty potentially than the guy that's just like the local business who's doing it in order to, not lose his house that day. Like, I mean,
look, so Alvin Bragg being a progressive Black district attorney in New York County shook up a lot of people's minds, it seems like. And New York Post has been attributing a lot of cherry-picked data that is not in any way different from the two predecessors that he's had across the last half century, given the fact that Cy Vance was there for, I think, like 10, 12 years, right? But Morgenthau was there for like, what, half a century? Mike, you remember Morgenthau? Mike, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was on mute. I was gonna look up your timeline to see how long he was there.
Yeah, so yeah, man. What my point being is this: I do not think that like these stats are different. Yeah, there are certain bail reforms that have been made that will that have allowed poorer folks who have not been convicted of crimes to bail themselves out. We still do not allow super violent offenders on like low cash bail. That's not a thing that's happening and stuff. And like, again, the New York Post likes to kind of handpick certain little examples of individuals who, might get released and get picked up for another crime or whatever here and there and stuff. And like in a big city like this, they'll put it on, page 3 and whatever, and get a bunch of people spooked and put it all at the feet of Alvin Bragg, when like all these are far more nuanced issues. I don't think he's soft on crime. I think there's a reason he became a prosecutor. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference, like a topic of discussions about whether certain things should be force folks to be arrested, right? Like, yeah, I don't think that like the solution is to not arrest anybody for petty theft. let's say at a drugstore. I think that's also kind of stupid. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't
Norman
think
Dow
that they
was
should be
DA
given
for
like
34
hard
years.
time, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that, you still should, you know what I mean, be fingerprinted and whatever and stuff and kind of go through the system and then go back out, I guess. But like, there needs to be some sort of,
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. Like, nuance again.
yeah,
Morgenthau was Manhattan DA for 34 years. So there you
yeah,
go.
man.
So I saw a good comment actually with Steve Bihar, who was going back and forth with some of the Republicans, I guess, on his page, who were upset about this. And he said Trump should be arrested and held in jail. No bail, right? That's what you guys want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Why not?
So
If they want to push that on someone else, then
Hold on a second. I don't want to say that, man. Not at least not in this case.
if they
Not,
want
not
that
on
for
not,
other people,
not on these charges. Maybe on treason charges. Maybe he should be held without bail.
right? But if they want that for other people, then why would it be?
right, I think the
That's the
point is
point.
to acknowledge that there is nuance here, and you can't
Right.
say there should never be bail. It should always be bail.
No, I mean, look.
Case-by-case
I mean, bail should be really in relation to the amount of time that you're facing and the likelihood of skipping it, right? So, folks that,
That's
for
what it
example,
is.
have
Right. If you're
have a lot more means of like skipping the country probably should have a higher bail, but also people who are facing longer sentences than 4 years. You know what I
He's
mean?
facing
also be-
125 years, and he's got
He's
a
not
very
facing-
high
he's not-
likelihood. He's got a very high likelihood of escape or ability to skip the country. Does that not factor?
No. The second part of what you're saying is correct. That's why he should have a higher bail. The first part is incorrect because he's not really facing that amount of time. It's not 4 times 34 real.
That would be the maximum in theory.
It's
Yeah.
not. It's
never
not
gonna happen.
136 years just because it's up to 4 years for
Right.
each 34 counts.
Right.
Even if he was to get the max sentence, they would let him do his time. What is it, consecutively and stuff? Concurrently.
Listen, don't mess with the fantasy, Andre. There's enough problems in reality that do not mess with the fantasy. 125 years gives me a very nice smile.
I got a really nice point to kind of end everybody's fantasy on. The second legal marijuana dispensary in New York City just opened up here in South Queens on Jamaica Avenue. It is Black woman owned. Go
Okay.
and check it out.
It's kind of hard for me to get there, but all right.
But yeah, you're coming, aren't you? You're coming soon to New York.
Jay coming soon.
No, I don't have any plans on that.
That is
Actually,
unfortunate.
should have been back in Japan by now, but I'm still here in the States. So
You're slumming it out here with us.
yeah, man. This craziness is happening.
Listen, man, look, politics is heating up, man. Maybe at some point we all make a lot more money and stuff and come visit you in Japan. And we'll do the podcast from Japan with a lot of sake.
All right.
Sounds
Maybe that's
good.
the bottom line. I don't know. We like to give our guests, as you know, Andre, the bottom line. It could be anything on your mind, and it makes me scared to give you that much free reign, because who knows what Andre's going to say. But you do have the last word. You have the bottom line. Andre, what is the bottom line for us?
I am very happy to have NATO welcome Finland into its forces. And yeah, man.
That was much more tame than I thought it was going to be, Jay.
Yeah, man, look, guys, happy.
He's occupied.
I'm trying not to curse. I'm trying to be polite. I'm trying to be.
All right.
Go check out that the weed shop though, man. It's good things.
I was hoping for something spicy, and he's like, "Yo, this."
No, we got enough spice though. Andre gave us the spice. He came with it this week.
Always a good time when Andre jumps on.
And Jay, of course, where can people find us?
They can find us on YouTube at Nuance Show. You can find us on Instagram also at Nuance Show. If you're in the podcast, which you should be, you can go Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere where podcasts are. And we are also just on YouTube podcasts. They just kind of launched their thing there. And so we've added us on that as well. So yeah, we're wherever you need us to be. And so subscribe, join, comment, join the conversation. Hate watch us if you must. And yeah.
We love everyone, even the hate watchers.
Absolutely.
And as always, we've got work to do. We'll catch you next time.
Right.
Have a great night, everyone.